Hello, Steve White, Trek Way 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, this episode of Prodigy, episode 16, Preludes, was interesting. I was enjoying the first half of the season. It feels like the first season. This feels like the second season. It's a whole year apart. I don't know why they're doing it like one season. But I wasn't really engaged in the overall story that felt too Star Wars-like to me. I was enjoying more the individual sort of adventures in between. But the last few episodes of this season, and this season has been more about this overall sort of bigger sort of chase with Janeway sort of coming in and everything. And I wasn't really enjoying it as much. This episode, fortunately, was a huge change of pace. The kids are basically repairing the ship and they start telling their stories while they're sort of having their downtime while they do the repairs. We find out that the giant monster kid was basically playing a monster for this guy, sort of like a theme show. Like he'd go around and he'd be like the hero fighting the monster, and people would pay to watch like sort of like a gladiator fight. But she got sick of it, and she turned around and in a comedic turn bet him, and he enjoyed it. But the fans didn't really like seeing the monster become the hero, so the crowds went away, and he sold her off to whoever ended up taking her to where she ended up, which I can't remember if the first season, if it was a prison ship or if they were just using slave labour that they'd bought to man the ship. I can't remember. But then they go into the Medusan story. He was basically just enjoying being a Medusan, basically free on the planet, and you see these balls of light sort of just travelling around and sharing thoughts and everything, and then a bunch of Kazons show up and capture them in devices, kind of like the device that we saw in the original series episode. And that's his story. We don't get Murph's story, and unfortunately, one of the things I was really enjoying was Murph, and I think they've ruined the character. I mean, had he evolved into a more sophisticated being that was more involved in the story or the dialogue, it would have been interesting, but they just changed him into a different, less interesting, less original form, and he just acts like a baby. So it's like they took away the cute and interesting alienness about him and didn't contribute anything new. So I'm not enjoying the character at all. He didn't give any backstory. Then we went into Jacob, and basically the Tellarites send their kids off to deep space missions, the orphans, and he woke up in the middle of a cryo sleep because a meteorite hit the ship, caused some damage. A spanner fell on his pod basically and woke him up. He went around the ship fixing a bunch of things, and then, which doesn't make any sense, there wasn't enough oxygen, so he couldn't go back into cryo, and there wouldn't be enough oxygen for the people. It didn't really make any sense why there'd be this limited amount of oxygen that one person breathing for a couple of days to do some repairs would make not enough, for the rest of the people, for the crew. So he ends up, for the mission, so he ends up leaving the ship to save the other 29 kids, and then he eventually gets caught by, I think, the Kazon as well. So we see the Kazon and the Klingon in some of the audiences for the gladiator fights and stuff like that. So it's nice to see them in their real Star Trek sort of appearances, and the show does feel more canon, which is kind of interesting, like now how Picard has original Klingons again in the form of Worf, so it's sort of strange to see this, but the animated shows have been more canon in appearance than, and in the designs, using the original designs and the live action shows. So now we get to Janeway's story. Basically, the trader is trying to help the Diviner remember what happened, and she explains to him basically that the Federation came to them. Their civilization went into civil war over joining the Federation. The Federation left, abandoned them. They felt that they basically came and ruined their planet and then left. Then the protostar showed up. It went through some sort of space anomaly and time anomaly, and rather than have it be captured, Chakotay sent it off on autopilot back into the time disruption or whatever it was. The people went after it. 100 ships were sent. At least 2 went through. 1 went back 20 years in the past because the wormhole was collapsing, so I guess they ended up at different points in time. And their one was 20 years back, the Diviner's one was 20 years back, and he didn't know how long it was going to take to find the ship, so he created his progeny so she could continue on for him if he didn't live long enough to find the ship, because I'm guessing he didn't know when in time it was going to appear and how long it was going to take for it to appear and to find it. So they get through that story, and then Janeway, she's reading a profile on the kids at the time while this is happening, and she realizes that they are just kids who are in way over their heads. And then she walks in, goes to talk to them, walks in, gets knocked out, and that's where the episode left off. Now, the good thing about this episode was it tied up a bunch of loose ends, a bunch of things that were being dragged out over this sort of overarching sort of story, which I wasn't really engaged in. I wasn't sort of waiting around for the next sort of clue. I'm glad they sort of wound up a lot of it, explained a lot of it. It's all very clear now. A lot of the things in the show, they were kind of bugging me. So I'm kind of glad. But now I'm wondering what they're going to do for the next season, because they've got 4 episodes to wind up this story. Once they do, where do they have to go? It's not like a conventional Star Trek story in the Star Trek format where it's like this ongoing mission to explore the universe. This is a sort of contained story, and I'm wondering, is there going to be a 3rd season? I don't know, because it feels like they split the first season into 2 seasons, because maybe they weren't going to get any more, and this is just rounding up the story, because a lot of animated shows only get like maybe 2 years, and sometimes they just do one big lump of episodes and split it up into 2 seasons and so forth. So I'm not sure if they're doing a 3rd season or not, but I'm not sure where they're going to go. Are the kids going to end up being accepted into Starfleet? Are they going to go into Starfleet Academy? Are they going to spin off to the Starfleet Academy show, or are they just going to keep running from the same people, for year and year, and it's just going to go on with that? If they have missions and the chasing, that part is just a small part of the overall show, I think maybe it could be interesting. But if it's all just chase, it's going to be like The Fugitive in space, and it's just not going to be that interesting for people who want Star Trek style adventure and stories. So I don't know. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks. Bye.